I think we're still at a magical moment when it comes to client development. I think even this morning, Becky and I are texting each other in Teams. I'm sending her my location. We're getting real-time updates. We're sitting here. We're responding to email. And yet, we're still moving forward. And there's so much more that we can be doing every single day. And for the last 13 years, people have been telling me, well, you know, that mobile thing's cute that you've been doing. And you know, there's going to probably be something next, and you know, what about that other thing? What about these goggles? What about this AI thing? What about this other thing? In fact, last night, just at the mixer, I was talking with some folks, and we were talking about that. What's next? And I said, for me, what's exciting is what else I can put into my mobile application. How do I transform what I've been doing for the last 13 years into creating new, exciting experiences for my customers and users around the globe, and for myself? I love to build applications for myself. That's what got me into mobile development, actually coming on campus for the first time about 16 years ago, 15 years ago, for one of the last professional developer conferences, PDC, before they relaunched its build. It was a magical moment because I was a WinForms developer, and I was handed for the first time a smartphone that I could develop for as a .NET developer, and my mind was blown away. All I wanted to do was go home and start developing, and I did. And that's what I've been doing up until this point. And I think now is really exciting because as the platforms evolve, not only iOS, Android, Windows, and the Mac platforms, also are these amazing platforms that we get to develop for. I can't tell you how easy it is to get into mobile development, and still yet those fun challenges along the way of trying to publish your application to the App Store. Which is why I, James Montemagno, is here to talk about the development part, and why I have the expert for .NET MAUI, Becky here, who leads the publishing experience for .NET MAUI. And we're going to be talking about what's new and next for .NET MAUI developers. And many of you were here for our workshop yesterday, so I appreciate you coming back for a lot more. So we're going to cover a lot of things, not only what's in the product, what's new, what's about to be released, and what's far into the future. I'm James Montemagno, a program manager here at Microsoft, overseeing our developer community. I've been building mobile applications with .NET for like 13 to 18 billion years at this point, and I love every single moment with it.
Yeah, hi, I'm Becky Buckler. It's good to see you guys back today. And I'm a PM on the .NET MAUI team. So yeah, not quite as many years as you, but we're working on it.
We're working on it.
I'll catch up, right? That's how time works.
Everybody starts somewhere. Yes, yes. Now with us at Microsoft and the community, we want to ensure that .NET is a platform that you can build absolutely anything for. Like I said, I was a WinForms developer. I built some Silverlight apps. I built some WPF apps. I built some ASP.NET Core apps. I built some Blazor applications. I built some Azure functions. I built some web APIs. I've done some Logic and Logic apps. I've done some Unity games. I've done it all. I mean, look at all. You got to do them all because they're all there. .NET really, truly empowers developers to build for absolutely anything. And that's what I love about it. Whether you're building on Mac, Windows, or Linux, we have amazing IDEs and code editors for you, and a great ecosystem out there to absolutely develop for anything. And what I love here is that while we want to continue to build amazing experiences in these core platforms and frameworks on top of it, there's an amazing community out there that are building unique experiences for their use case. So what I like is that while we at Microsoft build some astonishing frameworks, there's probably also someone out in the community building something that might fit your needs, right? There's no one perfect framework out there, but we try to do our best to build that foundation and build something amazing for developers to do. And when it comes to mobile and desktop, that's why we are building .NET MAUI.
Yeah, so in order to reach all these devices with beautiful app experiences, we built .NET MAUI to be the most productive way to develop native apps with a single code base that perform great on any device.
And I think what's great about .NET is the choice that we have, right? When you think about the full reach, especially when you think of the web and the billions of people using the web every single day, either on their phone or on their desktop or anywhere else. And with that, we have ASP.NET Core and Blazor. Whether you're building websites or progressive web apps, you get that full reach. On the flip side, we have .NET MAUI. And like Becky just said, giving you that real depth inside of those mobile clients and desktop clients to build those rich applications. And we'll also touch on today the best of both worlds based on your needs, which is hybrid development, combining both Blazor and .NET MAUI together to build rich applications across every single platform humanly possible.
So instead of learning different stacks and languages for each device, you can use one language, one set of libraries, and one UI stack for all of them. APIs are available directly from C# to access over 60 device platform features, including things like isolated storage, sensors, geolocation, camera, and more. Use one programming language, one code base, and one project system for all device targets with support for cross-platform resources, including images, icons, splash screens, and more. .NET MAUI on Windows supports WinUI, allowing these apps to use all the newest native features on supported versions of Windows 10 and 11.
And I love this slide because it really shows what the team is building, not only the base layers of iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows, but building .NET MAUI on top of it and building rich tooling there. And .NET MAUI has been generally available now for over a year and was shipped with .NET 6, now .NET 7, and will progress to .NET 8. And a lot has happened since then.
Yeah, .NET MAUI is growing and active with this unique offering and flexibility. Not only has .NET MAUI been an extremely active open source project on GitHub, but we have also seen an ever-increasing demand from developers. It has been just 1 year and some change, since the team launched the first version of .NET MAUI, and the adoption rates for new projects and project migration from Xamarin and Xamarin Forms has been fantastic. Now, you may be asking yourself, who are these developers and what are they building? Besides you, obviously,
are they?
You're like building apps on the daily.
Who are they?
Who are they?
Is it just a slide with my face on it?
Well, if you want a slide with a lot of things on it, you're about to experience that. So, behold all the logos. There are companies large and small from all verticals building with and for .NET MAUI today. Some of these names may look familiar, such as several products from Microsoft, such as the Office 365 admin app or Fidelity, one of the largest investment firms in the world. No matter what you're building, .NET MAUI is there for you. It's great to have a wall of logos, but I want to share a story of one of the companies building with .NET MAUI. All right. So this is Earth Solutions. Earth Solutions is a company that provides solutions that are used all over the nation for damage prevention and risk management to asset protection and a lot more. An example of what Earth builds is the 811 ticket management system that is used to handle all digs across the nation, and their meter inspections platform for managing electronic and gas meter inspections. These are things that are essential for our day-to-day life. I don't know if you're doing any home improvement, but
I did recently call 811 because we were putting in some power in the backyard. And
yeah.
You have to do it. Before you dig.
Yeah.
811.
We just bought a house, so we don't have any money to do the home improvements. But
well, you'll be digging yourself. So
yeah. Oh, you know what? Can I skip the 811 or no?
No, it's free.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, it's free.
It's free to do the 811.
Come on out. They'll spray. They'll do that.
Okay, but the work part's not free.
No, you got to do that yourself.
You got to pay for that.
But it's your time.
Okay. But Earth, they've been building this modern app across platforms with .NET MAUI for handling all of this. There we go. So as you can see, it is a large, complex application with hundreds of controls and views that people in the field will use. So let's take a look at it in action. All right, we've got our nice little screen cap of the video here.
Put it in fast mode.
We did put it in fast mode. My goodness, yes. So
3x.
It is 3x. So all of you are taking notes on this right now. There's going to be a quiz later. But Earth, as you can see, they have to navigate with a ton of different features. We've got the camera feature. We've got geolocation with maps. Even just those alone, I don't want to program this. How long would this take you to make?
Too long. Yeah.
Long. Okay.
Yeah, as a solo developer. Yeah, and I think what I think is great here is that it's not just on phones that they're carrying around, but they have these big tablets as well that they're carrying around. And .NET MAUI is flexible to not only the mobile devices, tablet devices, and desktop experiences as well. And they're using obviously built-in controls and also third-party controls from companies that we'll talk about a little bit later in the session too. But it's a really cool example, especially the types of apps that I built for a long time and the types of applications that we see in the real world, which are advanced, right? We show a lot of Hello World applications, especially in demos, but it's great to see real live applications from our amazing developers around the globe building with .NET MAUI.
Also, it looks really nice.
It looks very nice, yeah.
It's a good looking app.
Now, to build these applications, we want to ensure that developers have world-class tools. Visual Studio 2022 on Windows is world-class, infused with intelligent code editing, AI assistant, Copilot, enabling you to really get in and build some awesome applications. Full line completion. We were just in a workshop yesterday here, and literally the IDE writes the code for you, which I absolutely love. But also some great iteration features like hot reload, XAML hot reload, previewing as well, and being able to deploy anywhere easily from just a single dropdown. And of course, on the Mac, we have Visual Studio 2022 for Mac, which has been rebuilt from the ground up on .NET itself. It was rebuilt on .NET 6, rebuilt UI experiences, and great integrated tooling for developers when they want to quickly iterate, especially on iOS applications. So I'm going to do a quick demo here. If some of you were here yesterday, you'll see some of this, but I just want to kind of walk a little bit through this in general as we go through. So when you're inside of Visual Studio over here, I've created a brand new .NET MAUI project. And to do that, all you got to do is open up Visual Studio. In any flavor, I'm always on the preview because I like to run risky over here. And when you go in, you will see that there is a drop-down here, and you'll see MAUI. And there's going to be a few different templates. I actually have the amazing third-party template engine called the MAUI App Accelerator. This is an awesome extension from one of our MVPs here at Microsoft that enables you to scaffold applications, pages, choose your frameworks, extensions, and stuff like that. And I don't know why it's a goat, but it's pretty cute, so I like that.
Love that, yeah.
Now, if you don't have that extension installed, which I highly recommend you check out, you'll see these three templates, which is a MAUI app, a Blazor Hybrid app, and a class library. And I chose the MAUI application, and you will get a brand new project that looks a little bit like this. When I zoom in here, what we're going to see is that it's one project, one solution like Becky was talking about. Here I have all my dependencies, so I can see Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, and Windows. And then we get these specific folders where I can put platform-specific code and resources. Under platforms, we have specifically the Android, iOS, Mac Tizen support from Samsung and Windows experience here. And this is any code that is specific to that platform. So if it's in an Android folder, it'll only get compiled against Android itself. So if I open up the main activity, it means that it's using Android namespaces because as a .NET MAUI developer, you have access to the underlying platform of iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows in C#. So a lot of this code you won't have to touch, but if you did need to come in, for example, and access something in the Android namespace, you have access to all of the different Android spaces that are there, all in C#, which is quite delightful. Now over here, we'll also see resources, and these are the things that Becky was talking about. Cross-platform app icons, fonts, images, raw assets, splash screens, and styles. The team has gone above and beyond to stylize every single control inside of .NET MAUI that's built in, so you get great light theme and dark theme support out of the box, and you can completely customize it. Just go into the color XAML, change your colors, and your whole application will adjust accordingly, which is really nice. You can also drop in fonts, like I said, including font icons, and app icons and splash screens are generated for you automatically. One of my favorite features is the images, where you can put in not only PNG and JPEGs, but also you can put in SVGs. These will all be automatically resized for you 100%, so no matter what device your application is running on, it's going to look awesome. If I double tap on the MAUI app, we're going to see that inside the CS Proj, we're going to see all the different build targets. And if I want to publish on Samsung Tizen devices, I can also add that support in too. Inside the CS Proj, it's been cleaned up with the latest format, which means that it is very trim and slim, which is great. But it also adds unique features for .NET MAUI developers, such as the application title, app IDs, application version numbers, and backwards support attributes. So this is going to say that this application supports all the way back to iOS 11, for example, or Android API 21. What's great here is that all of these information is just in the CS Proj. And when you compile up your application, it's basically swizzled and compiled into the main application platform, so you don't have to worry about it. Here you can also specify additional folders and splash screens and images, and you can override the defaults as well if you're using SVGs and base sizes. And of course, you can use as many packages from NuGet as you would like. Here in the dropdown, all you need to do is simply go in and select your target. You have Windows machine, Android emulators, local devices for iOS, and you can connect to a Mac to do iOS devices as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that more here in a bit. The default and easiest, since I'm here on Windows, is just to click on Windows. This is going to compile up my application, and then it'll deploy it directly into my Windows machine. Deploying it directly to your Windows machine or from your Mac, from Visual Studio for Mac, by far is the fastest way to develop because there's no additional layers or emulators or simulators that you have to worry about. It's all right there on your machine. And here it is. This is our hello world. Welcome to .NET MAUI. And as you can see, over on the right-hand side, I'm getting a nice XAML Live preview. This is a real snapshot of my running application. Let me go ahead and resize it. There we go. That's a little bit better. And this is cool because I'm on a single monitor. Now, some of you might have 8,000 monitors at home. I got one big one. Too big. It doesn't make. I think one big. It doesn't make any sense. I do use Power Toys, which is my favorite to put things in different spaces. But there's nothing like having a ginormous Visual Studio that's 48 inches wide. That's just right there. So what's great here is that this is actually showing my real live running application, and I can click and tap on this here. I can change this from Hello World to Hello VS Live, and it will update in real time, not only in the XAML Live preview, but also directly in my running application. I don't even have to save to do that. I can also come in and take a look at the code behind. So let me open up that file here. And right now, we're seeing that the incrementer is by 1, so I could say plus equals 10. I'm going to hit this hot reload button right here, which is going to hot reload my code. And now, whenever I increase, we can see that it's increasing by 10 every single time. You can not only modify your XAML, but using C# and .NET Hot Reload, reload your C# code without even having to stop debugging. And what's great here is that you can modify your XAML, add, remove things, and if you have a large application, you'll also see a live visual tree. This is one of my favorite features too. So you get a full outline of the application, the scroll view, the images, the icons, and you can simply tap on one and it'll navigate to your code. It's a really delightful experience inside of Visual Studio to get up and running. Now, of course, I can deploy it on Windows, but I'm going to go ahead and select one of my Android emulators that I have here. You can deploy to an Android device, to an Android emulator that works on any of your machines, or if you're on Windows 11, you can also enable the Windows subsystem for Android, which enables you to deploy your application directly to your Windows machine, but running it as an Android application on Windows with the Windows subsystem for Android. Now, what this is going to do at this point is it's going to sit there and it's going to compile up my application for Android, and then it's going to deploy it to my Android emulator. And this goes through a little bit of a different process because what it's doing is it's taking all of the source code that we had inside of our application, and then it is compiling it into a native Android package at the end of the day and deploying it to the emulator. And it has to go through a few different layers to do that, to actually get it up and running. So we'll see it go ahead and deploy here in a few seconds. And when you're building the package for the first time, it usually takes a little bit longer because it's doing a full package and recompile. And then after that, it's more of an iterative release. And while we're waiting for that to build and compile, I'll also show off really quick as I zoom in that inside of here, we're seeing a bunch of normal C# .NET-y things, right? So we have our code analyzers, we have our source generators for like JSON, for example, our regular expressions, and of course our packages too. So there's going to be some pre-built packages that come with .NET MAUI specifically for the different runtimes. So we have things that are from MAUI, like MAUI graphics for 2D graphics, but also the Android specific libraries that are required to actually build and compile up Android applications. So the .NET MAUI team has an iOS and an Android team inside of them that are specifically building those platforms for developers. So what you would have saw is the same thing basically, but now working over on Windows. Now, a lot of developers also ask us about Visual Studio Code.
True. In fact, when I started working for .NET MAUI, I was like, oh yeah, I work with VS. And all my classmates, because I just graduated, they're like, oh, I love Visual Studio Code. I'm like, ooh, not quite the same thing. But we have some exciting developments in that department. So last month in June, we released the first preview of the C# Dev Kit. It's a lightweight editor-first experience that augments your C# development in Visual Studio Code with a Solution Explorer, native Test Explorer, an AI-powered code authoring, and more. Okay, Visual Studio Code. And then last Tuesday, we shipped the first preview of the .NET MAUI extension, which paired with the C# Dev Kit gives you the tools you need to develop your cross-platform .NET mobile and desktop apps with VS Code on Windows, macOS, and Linux. Okay. The .NET MAUI extension lets you develop and debug your app on devices, emulators, and simulators from VS Code. .NET MAUI and the C# Dev Kit borrow some familiar features from Visual Studio to enhance your productivity, making your mobile and desktop development delightful with C# in Visual Studio Code.
And let's take a look at this. It's a preview currently, which means that it's not going to be 100% fully featured, but it's a pretty nice experience and is available across Windows, Mac, and PC as well. So let's go ahead and give that a look. So I'm going to go ahead and boot up VS Code over here. And the few things that I have installed, if I go to the extensions, not that extension, is that we have the C# extension, the C# Dev Kit, IntelliCode for C#, and .NET MAUI. The C# base package has been rebuilt from the ground up with the new LSP language server support that supports Roslyn and that it uses OmniSharp under the hood, and that's just been completely just updated and is open source under MIT licensing. The C# Dev Kit and the .NET MAUI extensions are under the Visual Studio subscriptions, and we'll talk about that here. But I've installed those, and when I do that, I get this little nice Create .NET project. Here it's going to ask me what type of application I want. I'm going to say .NET MAUI app. It's going to ask where do I want to put that. I'm going to go ahead and put that into my GitHub directory. And then what it's going to do is it's going to basically run the same commands that Visual Studio or the command line would run. It's going to ask me what my project name would be, and I'll say MAUI app 2. And now what we're going to see is that Visual Studio Code lights up, and we have our normal on the left-hand side, just kind of file browser, right? There's an OBJ, there's resources, app, there's no nesting, anything fancy happening on here. We can see these things happening in real time. However, with the C# Dev Kit, what we're going to see is that we have this new Solution Explorer. And this is going to give me all my projects. So if I had multiple projects, it would identify my solutions and show me all my projects. I just have one project because it's a .NET MAUI app. So here I can go ahead and collapse everything and code kind of how I normally would want to. Here I can take a look at my app XAML, my app shell, my main page, and I even have those drop downs for my code files as well. I get nice highlight syntax. And of course, if I'm coding in my C# files, I get my IntelliSense. If I'm using GitHub Copilot, that's all going to be there, or IntelliCode, which is great. I can see all my dependencies, just like I saw in Visual Studio. And I even have a test explorer if you are running unit tests with NUnit, XUnit, VUnit, any of those things, which is great. If I scroll down to the bottom right, we're going to see that I have this little C# icon, which means I've signed in, which is cool. Works with any subscription, community, professional, enterprise, so free community edition. And then this little curly braces is going to show me where do I want to debug, Windows, and what startup project here. If I tap on the debug target, it's going to pop up this window that shows me where do I want to deploy to, my Windows machine, my emulators, and if I was on a Mac, it would deploy to iOS as well over here. I'm going to be risky, and I'm just going to go ahead and select my Android device, come over to debug, and hit run and debug, and select .NET MAUI. This now is going to do the same thing that Visual Studio would do, and it's going to build and compile up this application and deploy it onto my device. Now, of course, I did just try about 14 times to deploy it to Android, so I don't know why I decided to pick it again.
Because, oh, so sorry.
Is that the emergency? Is that the engineering team?
That's when I normally wake up, everyone. We had to get up a little earlier today.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What's cool is that just like Visual Studio itself went and launched the application and the emulator, so will Visual Studio Code. Now, it is a lightweight code editor, so it's not going to give you all the features like an SDK manager or an Android emulator manager or things like that, but it is going to give you the base that you need to get up and running and deploying your application. So that's something that is a nice, delightful experience. Now, I mentioned that is running across Windows, Mac, and Linux, which means on Windows, Linux. I guess you can run it. That's the Windows subsystem for Linux plus it. When you go ahead and deploy your applications from Windows, you'll focus on Windows and Android. When you are on Mac, you can do Android, iOS, and Mac. And of course, on Linux, you will deploy and debug to Android, since Android experiences are available there. So that's sort of what we have going on in those spaces. Perfect. Awesome. It just built the application, and now it's going to go ahead and deploy it. Perfect. That should be it. It's a Hello World application, so it's perfect. So it should be, say, click me, and we can click it. And the application is off, running, and doing everything there. If I want to add breakpoints, of course, I can do that. And then I can go ahead and add a breakpoint, hit it there. I get my locals, my watch windows, everything that I would expect inside of VS Code. I can also create, apparently not, there. Or I just continue on. There we go. There's all the sender information. Perfect. And I can continue on and then see it up and running. I can also now say, oh, I want to switch this, and I want to actually go to my Windows machine. So I can select my local machine and hit run again. And now at this point, it's going to go ahead and rebuild the application for Windows. You can actually see the direct command that it's running here. So we can see this build, debug configuration, where it wants to go, and how it's going to deploy it. So again, this is now going to go ahead and spin up this Windows version of my application and get it off and running. So there we go. Built much faster because it's just doing a local Windows packaging build. And it should go ahead and run it on my machine. There we go. We got threads. Boom. Hello world. Amazing. And then hit breakpoints and continue on just like we would expect, right? I clicked it a lot of times. And there we go. So it gives you that experience. There are some things that are still in the works, like hot reload and other IntelliSense enhancements, and those will continue to come as we go. Now, Becky, you might be wondering, well, we did see Android, Windows. What about iOS?
What about iOS?
We don't have a Mac.
I don't have an iPhone. I don't have a Mac. I don't have any of that.
Don't have any of it. I do have an iPhone. What, you have an Android phone?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, live your life.
I like my Android.
All right, well, I guess I can't send you my location and then see
It's
in real
fine.
time.
And
you know,
what
green
color
bubbles.
are my text messages?
Green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Don't worry, I was only
I am a PM of the people, okay?
I was an Android user for 13 years, so I totally understand.
You saw the light, I'm sure.
No, I love them all. They're all magical star shines. So let's say I want to deploy to iOS. I just told you that I can't use Visual Studio Code to do that because it's not supported here. However, if I jump back over into Visual Studio on Windows, let's go ahead and scaffold out a new project and deploy that to iOS. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how we do that. When I create the new project, of course, I can select the version of .NET that I want. And any project inside of .NET MAUI will give us the examples of going to Windows, Android, like I talked about earlier. And then, of course, there are a few ways of building up your iOS application from Windows. The first thing is if we did have a Mac here, or if there's a Mac on the network, I can actually just click this little Pair to Mac button. That's going to enable me to do a remote login session with SSH and actually connect up and do a remote build and compilation, and it would show up here. There are none, because I didn't have mine with me. Mine's at home. So,
Don't ask to borrow yours, don't worry.
Yeah, that usually does work, yes. The other thing I can do is use a piece of technology called iOS Hot Restart. So I have my iOS phone here, and what I'm going to do is just plug it into my Windows machine. Now, the other thing that I've done is I have specifically logged into my Apple developers account from Windows over here. There we go, it pops up. And that is going to enable me to come up into the debug menu, and under iOS local device, we can see my James work iPhone. That's my
Not to be
work iPhone.
confused with your regular iPhone.
That is correct. And what this enables me to do is come in and set up and use Hot Restart. So this is the first time deploying this new application. So I can click Next. I can go ahead and select a team because I've logged in with. And this is going to go off and do a whole bunch of things. This is going to configure the application, register my device, download any certificates that I may need, and enable me to package up my application. Now, this is pretty unique. It's not actually going to deploy your actual physical application to your phone. It's going to take your source code and use our interpreter to interpret your source code inside of a predefined package that we re-sign. So this sort of debug package isn't something that you would ship to the store, but it is something specifically that you can take around, use those features like hot reload and hot restart to be productive. So the application is starting up, and I actually see the launch screen over here, and we can see things are happening, and hot reload is going to kick in. Here we go. And what we're going to see inside of Visual Studio, this actually may be more impressive than the Android emulator just showing up inside of it, is that we see the same exact experience that we would expect over there. So we have all of our XAML, we have all of our live visual tree, and we have our actual running application right here on our phone. And my phone's in dark mode, so you see the dark mode of it. And apparently, as you rotate it, you also see it rotate in real time. It's amazing.
Good job.
Because it's an actual mirroring of the screen, which is really cool. So that helps me be super productive on no matter how I want to develop my applications, whether I'm using full Visual Studio and I want to deploy using Hot Restart, or if I'm inside of VS Code, which I think is fantastic. Amazing.
Cool. That's amazing.
So we just saw how to be super productive in Visual Studio with advanced tooling and VS Code in a lightweight code editor. Now, VS Code, like I mentioned earlier, not only comes with the .NET MAUI extension, which is in preview, but the C# DevKit extension, which is also in preview too. This is going to add that Solution Explorer, Native Test Explorer, and that is licensed under Visual Studio. The C# extension is the same C# extension that existed before the C# DevKit was released. It's a dependency of the C# DevKit extension. So you can install just the C# extension and not anything else if you want. And that's going to give you sort of the next upgraded version of OmniSharp with rich C# code editing experiencing. There's no changes to licensing. It's all under MIT and open source and completely free. So it's all up there. Whereas the things built on top of it, like the C# DevKit and MAUI extension, are specifically licensed under the Visual Studio subscription, including Community, which is free, Pro, or Enterprise. And you just log in automatically. Yep, cool.
I'm curious, have any of you tried the C# extension and the Visual Studio Code experience? Yeah?
One or two people?
Yeah, so yeah, last Tuesday is when MAUI dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll take another lap around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's enhancing every single time.
Yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit about what's in the box, and last November, we launched .NET 7, and there was a lot of new features and a huge focus on performance.
Yep, that's right, James. Okay. Our team is amazing, and they're super dedicated to making your apps faster in regards to both the startup time and also just taking up less space. So we want to decrease the app size as much as possible so that you can deliver the app to your store of choice at the end of the day. In .NET 7, the team focused on rendering speed and scrolling in list views and collection views. If you were here yesterday, we got to learn about list views and collection views. And they were able to give a boost to rendering by nearly 50% and smooth out scrolling by optimizing the code of the handlers. At the same time, the team has been inching closer and closer to their half-second startup time goal on Android and iOS. That would be cool to see. Yep, and they just continue to decrease the app size bit by bit. So smaller and faster.
And there's great blogs from Jonathan Peppers about every single release that comes out that are digestible, unlike Stephen Tobe's, which are also digestible just over a long month. Just great.
Yeah, the SDK itself is not the only place the team is focused on. The core of the .NET MAUI development is inside Visual Studio, and the team knows that this is important to our new and existing developers. The team vastly improved build and success rates for all builds in Visual Studio and decreased hot reload errors, making developers more productive and being able to stay in the flow. It's very important. Finally, when you need to pair to Mac for iOS builds, the entire process was improved. We just saw that. Yeah. There were also new features requested by developers, specifically around desktop, right?
Yes. With .NET MAUI, obviously there's a large focus coming from the Xamarin and Xamarin Forms background for mobile, but desktop is a world-class experience. .NET MAUI not only enables like multi-window support with desktop, but also the things that desktop users will know and love, such as tooltips. Tooltips enable developers to easily add little right-click tooltips on top of it. You can add pointer hover effects inside of your visual estate as you hover over, and even add context menus as well. So these are all now built into every single control in .NET MAUI. They also added other tap gesture recognizers, such as right-click events, which is something that was also added in the most recent release. So a real advancement when it comes to the world of actually going in and building desktop experiences across Mac and Windows, and we're going to see that theme as we go into .NET 8. Now, additionally, there was a big, large focus on migration. We had a lot of developers coming from the Xamarin and Xamarin Forms space, and we wanted to ensure that it was easy for developers to move forward into .NET MAUI. Now, Xamarin and Xamarin Forms are continuing to be supported until May of 2024, but there's no better time to start moving, especially with the release of .NET 7 and the upcoming release of .NET 8. Now, I'll show you how easy it is, not only from the .NET Upgrade Assistant CLI, but also from Visual Studio 2022 itself. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to go ahead and look in my extensions. And under Installed, we're going to see the Upgrade Assistant. Perfect. And inside of here, you can install the .NET Upgrade Assistant. The .NET Upgrade Assistant itself is specifically built not only for Xamarin and Xamarin Forms, but it's also built for upgrading .NET Framework from .NET Core to .NET 5, 6, and 7, and a lot more. So we're doing this live because I did it on my other machine at work, and then I forgot to install it here for the actual demo. So we're doing this real live.
Lots of live today.
Lots of live. If you've never installed an extension in Visual Studio, it's very, very fast. Look at how fast this is installing and getting up and running inside of my Visual Studio Community Edition 2022, which is pretty cool. Now, the Upgrade Assistant, the best way to find information about it is to go to .NET. And when you go there, under Features, you're going to see the Upgrade Assistant in the top right. This is going to show you everything you need, including a great video here from Olia. And it's available not only inside of Visual Studio, but also as a CLI tool that works on Windows and Mac. And the Mac support was just added. Here you can see all the different project targets that you can go ahead and use, including UWP to WinUI, Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI, and more. Let's see if it did it. It's finishing up. Amazing. Now, we use this not only internally at Microsoft, but also there's amazing customers around the globe that are using the .NET Upgrade Assistant to do it. We'll see if it's going to go ahead and finish in time and actually get it up and running. That's the one thing apparently I forgot to do, but that's okay. And we also have great ebooks that'll help you in your migration along the way too. So if that doesn't work in time, we'll see. We'll give it literally, oh my gosh, there we go, perfect. So let's say I'm a Xamarin Forms developer inside of Visual Studio. So I'm coming into Visual Studio and I have a project. So let's go ahead and create a project with Xamarin Forms. So I'm going to go under Mobile and I'm going to go ahead and select a Xamarin Forms application. I'm just going to call it App 1, which is a great name. And we're just going to go ahead and say Flyout. So any Xamarin Forms applications in the upgrade migration steps, there are a few things that have changed. Not only just the targeting, we can see here that we have an Android and iOS project and a .NET Standard project. And then additionally, all of the namespaces have been updated and several of the different properties may have changed as well. So inside this project, I can actually go in and now say upgrade. Now, this is an upgrade assistant, right? It's not actually going to fully take you 100%, and I'm not going to be able to just right-click go. I did do this the other day, and it took me maybe about 10-15 minutes from a file new to actually get it migrated over to .NET MAUI. But the upgrade assistant's really cool. I can come in, and I can say, do I want to do it in place or side-by-side project? Let's do that. I'm going to create a new project and say next. And I'm going to say that I want to use the MAUI application template. And this is going to be called App 1 Core, whatever it is. I can select the version that I want. So let's do .NET 7. And now it's going to take a look at all of the different files and project settings. And I'm going to say upgrade. This is going to run through the entire application. And it's going to go ahead and not only use the new template, but it's going to bring over all of my views, all of my view models, and all of my services here. So here now, I can go into my login view model, and I can see that it's using and upgraded all of the .NET MAUI, different controls, base view models, and everything I'm using in here. Whereas if I go into the old one and I go into the login, we can see that we're using Xamarin Forms and things like that. So it takes all that code, upgrades it naturally, and now I can bring this into a MAUI application. So this is just sort of a library that's here, and I can add on other support. So literally, just a few clicks and totally ready to go, which is super rad.
Yep, it is an upgrade assistant, not an upgrade magician.
Yes.
Not, magic wand. It's
That's-
doing its best. Yeah.
That is correct.
But, at the heart of .NET MAUI is you guys, our developers, and your productivity. Whether this is your first, maybe like me, or your 5 millionth, like James, time opening up a project, you will benefit from the robust suite of tooling made to get you building your beautiful apps faster. All right, so in addition to the NuGet packages built and maintained by community members, there's a vast set of component vendors building out suites of controls that are both free and paid.
Like free?
I like free too. Yep, yeah, see previous. We just bought house. We don't have any money. So we have DevExpress. DevExpress recently released a lovely set of controls that are completely free. Yeah, for developers, data grids, enhanced collection views, tabs, pop-ups, shimmers, and so much more are included. Even have a great Visual Studio template to get you started. Okay. We also have Guile UI. They have been a staple for Xamarin Form developers, and the team has been hard at work on the UI kit for .NET MAUI with pre-built templates, pages, a vast amount of controls. There's a lot to choose from. They are also working on developer workflow improvements and recently shared Guile Studio for developers. It gives you an add-in for Visual Studio to easily integrate controls, icons, and so much more. It's really cool to see the community build such great products on top of .NET MAUI. And it doesn't stop there. We have our friends at Telerik. They have a vast amount of controls ready to roll. Sam from Telerik is here at Visual Studio Live, so be sure to find him for a demo. Is he here right now?
He is. He's somewhere, yeah.
All right. Not here though.
No, he should be.
Okay.
Yeah,
and Sync Fusion, they were our roommates during Build.
Yep.
Yeah, they were really awesome to share a room with. And they gave out a great mug too. But they brought their entire control suite and office processing to .NET MAUI for developers as well. And then finally, Exceed has been working on new controls in a suite that is completely free for developers to use.
Yeah, it's really awesome to see not only amazing things from the community, like Becky said, but also just a rich ecosystem evolve. And that's nice because while .NET MAUI was built from the ground up, there's a lot of legacy in Xamarin Forms that can be brought over. And these companies and the community are hard at work doing that. It's really exciting to see it progress in just 1 year. And we're moving forward with .NET MAUI. We're actually on our, 6th preview of .NET 8?
That sounds right, yeah.
And it's been part of .NET since .NET shipped with .NET 6 and .NET MAUI together. And .NET 8 is the next major release, LTS support for .NET itself. And there's several improvements, right, in .NET 8 for .NET MAUI specifically.
Yeah, let's talk about what's coming in .NET 8. So we have the workloads, so .NET Access across the board, having multiple versions installed is going to be easier. Oh, shoot, I skipped the stability. We have stability too, yay. So we have quality effort report for top feedback and memory management and performance improvements there. But yeah, we have the workloads too, so workload clean, NuGet packages for previews. We got desktop, we were talking about desktop earlier. So form navigation with the keyboard and keyboard listeners. Actually, I had a friend who made a MAUI app, and he was asking for keyboard listeners.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because he was only focused on desktop. So I'll be giving him the good news.
Nice.
For sure. And then for hybrid, we have deep linking for Blazor Hybrid and hybrid WebView. And then for native, smaller and faster apps with native AOT and sharing .NET libraries to Objective-C and Swift. Oh, and then I know these grids, not quite as flashy as our huge page of icons earlier, yes. But if you look at the numbers are very exciting. So in .NET 8 Preview 6, the first preview for the native AOT for iOS was released. This is an evolution of the mono AOT that is found in iOS apps built with .NET today that bring it in line with AOT support in .NET itself. So we are seeing vast improvements for the size on disk.
And what we see here is for a traditional iOS application, just without .NET MAUI itself, we're seeing 40% size reduction between the Mono AOT and the .NET native AOT. And then also for a .NET MAUI application, we're seeing very similar size reduction as well, 30% in size without sacrificing performance as well. And iOS applications are fully ahead of time compiled. And of course, our Android applications with and without .NET MAUI also have AOT as well. But the first focus is on native AOT for iOS, since iOS applications do have to be ahead of time compiled and brings that in line. Well, this is going to be a preview feature in .NET 8, and the team hopes to roll it out fully in .NET 9.
I was going to say, this was a perfect time for you to use your laser.
Yeah, exactly. I have to go all the way out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more, like Becky said, talking specifically around desktop support and some of the common features. We saw those being built on with .NET 7 and enhancing in .NET 8. So things like accelerators, so Control F going into the file menus, which are a big addition as well. There's several other desktop enhancements I'm not going to go into specifically, but we do get a lot of questions about using native libraries. And the team is specifically focused on making that better. Today, the team or developers have to go through a workflow of binding these libraries for Java and Objective-C into C# bindings, when often what they want to do is just invoke a simple method or put in a view. So that means that there's a lot of work when you're only making 1 or 2 calls, because you have to go through this process of creating huge bindings. The idea is to come in line with how other platforms and frameworks are working with these native libraries by creating channels. And the idea here is being able to introduce methods into those native libraries where you can cross-talk between both .NET and the native platforms. So here, for example, this channel service, we're able to call in from C# into Java, or it could be Kotlin, and actually be able to get and create a channel to this label view, and then send something to the platform. You'd be able to not only send, but also receive cross-platform along the way, which is really great to see. So this will be really great when you just need access to a few methods in a Java library for Android or an Objective-C or Swift library for iOS. You don't need to bind the entire world. The team sees this as a way forward because it will not only make it faster and more productive for developers, but also means that the team will be able to support more of the packages faster and longer, so you don't have to wait around for new updates to be released. Now, we also mentioned that there were great enhancements for desktop, but there's been a big improvement for keyboard in general. Now, what we're seeing here are a few different versions of original MAUI, Xamarin Forms, and also the new MAUI demos. There's a lot of forms over data that occur in mobile applications, and the keyboard is always just the vein of like everyone's exists, and it's terrible. And especially on iOS, even myself today in using iMessage struggle with how even Apple introduces it. So there were a lot of enhancements in Xamarin Forms, and the team did its best to bring over those into .NET MAUI. Here in the far right series, we're seeing great improved scrolling and enhancements, so we don't see any overlapping keyboard, tabbing and next defaults automatically for accessibility features, which is really great. And of course, just everything working as one would expect when creating these, which I think is delightful. That's something you'll just get for free out of the box. Now let's talk a little bit about hybrid development. One of my favorite things, and actually the next session, is going to be Dan talking about Blazor, which is our full stack for building web apps. And doing this enables developers to build apps directly in C# without having to use JavaScript. And it's really taken the world by storm. We're seeing large customers around the globe adopt Blazor, since it's part of ASP.NET, into their workflow. In fact, the .NET website itself is a beautiful blend of ASP.NET Core Razor pages and Blazor Razor components as well, which is delightful. And I got to work on the Blazor components on the live TV section, and it's something I actually understand because I'm not a user of JavaScript often. So writing everything in C# is absolutely delightful. Not only if you want the power of the server, but also directly in the browser with WebAssembly. Now, Blazor is a great platform because it enables you to build on the web and go absolutely anywhere, whether it's progressive web apps or it is in the browser or on the server. And .NET MAUI is a great platform for building these different client applications. But if we combine them in a fancy PowerPoint transition, we get Blazor Hybrid, which enables us to build world-class applications for anything and blend both native and web technologies together. Now, the benefits of hybrid are that these devices are super duper fast, and it also means if you're in a development environment where you have web developers and you have client developers, you're able to blend these worlds together and build your web apps and your desktop apps and mobile apps faster. Or if you are a web developer, now you can take your existing technology knows and bring them directly into mobile and desktop with .NET MAUI. So you have a lot of advantages here. The great part about how hybrid development with .NET MAUI and Blazor works is that there is no server. There is no WebAssembly. Because .NET MAUI has a .NET runtime, it means that you can just use that .NET runtime to execute your C# code from your Razor components in Blazor, which is great. So it means you can ship to the App Store, you can do internal distribution, everything that you want, and you still have access directly to the native APIs of iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows because it's built inside of .NET MAUI. So now our application architecture looks a little bit like this. We have all the platforms on top, including web with Blazor. We have shared Blazor components across all the different platforms. And then we have our shared business logic, such as our models, our view models, and things like that, across the different platforms. And of course, you can blend as much as little as you want. You can have an application that's 100% Blazor and just bundled into a .NET MAUI app, or just a little bit of Blazor too. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, I'm gonna go into Visual Studio, and I'm gonna now say File, New Project. And instead of creating a MAUI app, just a MAUI app, I'm gonna select this .NET MAUI Blazor app. I'm gonna call it MAUI App 7, that seems correct, and I'm gonna hit .NET 7. All right, so here, when I open this project, the CS project looks nearly identical to the CS project that I showed you before. In fact, it basically is exactly the same. The difference over here is going to be inside of the dependencies that we have, are Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows, but we can see a dub root with some CSS, we can see some data, we can see some pages, which are Razor pages, and still the platforms that are here. Inside of the MAUI program file, which is also there in normal .NET MAUI applications, we have normal builder set up, including adding fonts, but we're adding the MAUI Blazor WebView and Blazor Web Developer tools. In any .NET MAUI application with or without Blazor, we have full dependency injection and constructor injection support, but here we're adding this weather forecast service. Now, inside the main page, we still have a XAML page, but instead of using the native controls for iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows with .NET MAUI, like those labels and buttons, we have a Blazor WebView. This goes ahead and specifies as the roots component that we want to use, and in this case, main, which is specifying to use an index page, a fetch data page, and a counter page as well, so we can get those Razor components here. Now, when I run this application, the application is going to be compiled up into a native Windows, iOS, or Android application, but the Blazor WebView component that we see here is going to use specifically the native web control on the platform. So that's WebView 2 on Windows and the native web components on iOS, Android, or Mac. All right, so here's our application. And if you've ever created a Blazor application, this looks like a Blazor application. And here I can go to counter, I can click, I can go see fetch data, and this is all coming in. I still get all my previews, but this is using this fetch data. So here, for example, I could go in and add a breakpoint. I could go back and forth and navigate over here, and we get our breakpoints inside of the code that I would expect to be executing on. So here we're using that type of control. Now, if I go into the counter, it's going to be the same thing, and we get that nice functionality. Now, one thing that is really cool is that I can come into my counter and still access native controls. So for example, if I wanted to add another button here, I'm going to say check internet. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and say check internet. There we go. And then I'm going to make this, there we go. And all we got to do is now say var has internet. And if I want to check the internet, I'm checking the internet of a Windows, Android, or Mac machine, because that's what I'm running on. Now, built into .NET MAUI are a bunch of cross-platform APIs that Becky talked about earlier. So I say Microsoft.MAUI. We can see things in here such as devices. We can see there's all these fonts that are in here. We have file system helpers. We have font managers. We have just tons of different controls that are in here. If I type in networking, I have access to that. If I say, let's say activity or application model, I can see that I have my activity state, I have app information. So if I wanted to see my build version, package number, we have access to those, geolocation, and a lot more. Now I'm going to go into networking specifically, and I can say that I have the connectivity API here. Here, this is going to give me access to my network state. So I can go ahead and say, does my network have access to the internet, for example? And that'll be if I have internet. So now what I can do is say app.main application.current.main page, and I'm going to use a .NET MAUI API to display an alert and says has internet, ? And then I will output has internet and say OK. There we go. And I will say, I guess, I'm going to stop hot reload because I broke hot reload. That's OK. To string. There we go. Perfect. And we're going to run this again. OK. So we have another button on our Click Me page. And here, this is going to do one click to check the network access, and then go ahead and run this here. OK. We have our app. Perfect. One more time. I had this also happen yesterday. Here we go. Go into counter and then say click me, and it says has internet true, which is pretty awesome. If I go in and I go ahead and put this into airplane mode, boop. One, my mouse stops working, but I can still say click me, and now my has internet is false. And this is a native pop-up from Windows that's going on here. So that's really cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn Windows mode off, and I'm going to get back my mouse, or else I don't know how to use my computer. Yeah, well,
it's habit.
Yeah. Now, if I hit F12 here, I want to show you that the dev tools are here. So this is a web. I have my elements, I have my console, everything coming in here that I can select and go into, right? Because this is a web view that's on here. Now I can blend different controls. So if I wanted to, I could come into this main page. I could add, a button inside of here. So if I put a grid and I did, row definitions, and I said auto star, and I wrapped this in a grid like this, and then I did a grid dot row 1, and I added a button that says text click me. Here I can go ahead and get this blended. So here I would see basically a button that says click me in the first row, and then I'll see a Blazor web view below it. So there we go. We have click me up top, which is a native button that's just spanning the whole view, but I'm getting the web view below. You can put these in tabs, you can do a bunch of things, and of course this is going to resize. So if I'm on a mobile device, I'm going to get the drop down here. And you can say, do I want to use this type of experience, or do I want to use native tabs, for example, and embed the controls somewhere else, which is really cool. And of course you can deploy that to iOS, Android, anywhere else that you want. Now a lot of developers, though, are interested in, what about if I have existing just web assets without .NET itself? What if I'm not using ASP.NET Core or Blazor? What if I am using ASP.NET Core, but I'm using Angular or React, for example? Well, the team is working on several experiments to take this hybrid approach even further. Alon on the team, who's the lead engineer on this, actually has gone ahead and created an experiment called the hybrid web view. So we have the Blazor web view, but also a hybrid web view. This enables you to bring in your Angular, React.js, and Vue applications directly into a MAUI application and still actually use those native controls and blend the native and web components as well. You can communicate back and forth between JavaScript and .NET, which is really powerful. And of course, you can reuse these investments you may have. So let's take a look really quick. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and close this solution really quick. Awesome. And the first thing I'm going to do is open up the world's simplest sample hybrid application. So this here is using a standard .NET MAUI project. But if I go into the main page, we're going to see that this is using a hybrid web view. The hybrid assets are in this hybrid root, and it's going to load this index HTML. Under the raw assets are just HTML and JavaScript. So here in the HTML file, we can see that I have a simple div that says your message with some input. And then here, this is going to send the message to C# using JavaScript. Now here we have the document that's going to grab the element. So that's standard JavaScript. Look at its beautifulness. And here there is an extension called Hybrid WebView to send a raw message to .NET. Now in the code behind for my main page, I'm able to come in and add this on Hybrid WebView raw message received event. And in fact, you see that here inside of my control. What this will do is it will take it, it'll make sure it runs it on the main thread, and it'll display an alert, just like we saw earlier. So let me go ahead and run this on Windows, and the same true thing would run on Android or iOS in the same experience. This is going to use the same controls that the Blazor WebView did, but of course, this is just simple CSS and HTML and JavaScript. So I could say, hey, VS Live. I'm going to go ahead and add a breakpoint in here. This is going to invoke that method from JavaScript, call into my C#, and here I can see the message of hey, VS Live, and it's going to go ahead and do a pop-up. There it is, which is pretty cool. And you can send messages back and forth. If we take a look at a more complex sample, which is what you'll see on the GitHub repo, I can go ahead and open that. You'll see all the source code for the hybrid WebView, which is all here, and a few other examples. Some more involved one, which shows the interop back and forth with more code. And then additionally, a React.js application. This is the out-of-the-box React to-do application that has a lot of static resources, CSS, and JavaScript all chunked up that was just pulled down, and tons of logos and manifest files, even the robots text file inside of here. If I go ahead and run this application, we're going to see that this is the full 100% React application that is being run directly inside of a .NET MAUI application. Now in this example, it's not really using a lot of nativeness, but you could easily integrate those other properties like I showed you. So here, for example, we have all of our to-do lists. I can go ahead and check these items. We can say present at VS Live, add that in, and we can go ahead and check that off.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Now one thing that is pretty cool about this is if we go into this application and we look at the main page, notice that actually it's using a blend of native controls and the hybrid controls as well. It actually has a data binding here back and forth to this to-do items up top. So it actually shows how to not only reuse your React.js application, but also blend in some native controls and data binding as well. So that's really, really neat. Now, let's see if I'm going to be real risky and actually run this also on Android, and let's see how that works. We're going to think it's going to work?
I mean, it's too late to start playing it safe, so.
Too late now to say sorry. We'll see if this works. Well, we do have a DLL, so that's really good. And I like that. Now, I said that last time when I was excited that a DLL had occurred, and then it just sat there. We all know how that ended. So we all know how that ended, yes. But ideally, this will actually build and compile up the Android application and take all of that there. Now, like I said, this won't be using WebView 2 like it was on Windows. This will be using the Android web views. And again, those are the same web views that the Blazor hybrid control also uses. So let's go ahead and compile this up and see that. Oh, we'll see. Fingers crossed. Yep. The visuals. Oh, that's happening.
I see stuff on the screen.
It's happening. This is what I expected it to do before. Yeah. Yes. And there's an APK, so perfect, amazing. There we go. Love it. And it found an emulator. Very cool. Yeah. All right. Now, the nice thing, too, is that since it's a .NET MAUI application, we're going to see the same launch screens that we saw earlier. So here's the launch screens. It gets an icon. So all that nice scaffolding works the same. So you don't have to worry about that. That should work. And here we go. Here's our same exact React application, but now running inside of it. Present, add. Totally good to go. And we can see here we have the same exact React application, and it's responsive since it's using CSS and responsive styling over there, which is really cool. And you can filter and do a bunch of stuff. So being able to have that flexibility is really, really powerful and something that the team is focused on, so enabling all developers to build these types of experiences. Okay. Now, really to summarize, not only is .NET MAUI available today, but it's growing in flexibility and ensuring that the framework itself is performant and has the controls that developers need and a vibrant ecosystem around it. We have that full offering between Blazor, .NET MAUI, and the hybrid stack, and that is evolving as well. Everything's available today inside of Visual Studio, Visual Studio for Mac, and the brand new VS Code preview extension for .NET MAUI that gets you up and running. And so definitely check it out and give us feedback. You can go to .net/MAUI to learn more and install Visual Studio. And with that, I want to thank everyone for coming out, learning about what's new and next with .NET MAUI. And I appreciate it and hope you have a great VS Live.
Yeah.
We do have a few minutes for questions, so if anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand, and I will repeat them as we go. Yeah. Question was around additional platform support, specifically Linux. So right now, there's no plans on the books specifically to add more platforms for .NET MAUI. The team is focused on the stability and quality of the product that's there today, and then going and adding more platforms from there, right? The work that you see for web has been part of the core platform since launch, and also is in collaboration with the Blazor team and the web teams there. So but the core there for the handlers are focused. Javier from the engineering team does have an open source repo where he's been experimenting with Linux from a community fun side, project side. I'd also recommend taking a look though, if your application needs are specifically to deploy on Linux, then I would definitely take a look at some of the amazing projects for .NET that are out there like Avalonia or Uno. Both of those platforms are built on top of the iOS and Android stacks and other stacks from Microsoft and build a layer that they are going to those other platforms. And just like any other platform that's built on it, there's a great community around it in the world of .NET. So what I like to say is while we may not support a specific platform that you need to go to, there's probably something out there in the world of .NET that may work for you. I'm actually about to do some awesome videos with Wilderness Labs. I have Meadow, which is an IoT platform for .NET. And they have all sorts of cool support, and Avalonia supports that to like put graphics on this little IoT board and things like that. So in the world of .NET, there's a lot happening. So while we may not support it today, there's something out there. Question here. Oh, great question. So the question was, with .NET 8, is the installation process or anything with .NET MAUI changing? Because recently on one of the blogs, the team talked about NuGet package support for testing out in different versions of .NET MAUI. So from my understanding how that's going to work is that I don't think the core of it was going to change as far as the distribution of .NET MAUI itself with .NET. It will be optional if you want to install like nightly builds, for example, of .NET MAUI. You can go into your CS proj file and you can change the version of .NET MAUI, and it will then go to NuGet to download those optionally. So out of the box, it'll just use what's installed on your machine. But if you want to like do nightly builds, for example, or you need a hotfix, you'll be able to pull those in. Yeah, good question. Any other questions? Awesome, cool. We have stickers up here. Feel free to grab as many as you would like for your entire team. We don't want to take any back. They're just going to stay here forever. Thanks again. And up next, I know, is Dan in here, and Amanda's keynote after that.
Yeah.
So thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, another round.